Hey everybody again, I'm back. This is JT. We're going to go over another form preparation today, the addendums, in rather a low light place, so you don't get to look at my smiling face on this one, but I'm sure my smiling face will be back on something else. So today we're going to go over addendums. Here's the whole form. It is one page, so it's not going to take long to go through this lesson here. And it's pretty self-explanatory now that you've gone over and done a couple forms. So let's talk about a little bit the why of an addendum. If you notice up over here, it says to the agreement of sale. The addendum is used to modify any of the conditions or terms of a contract. You can include an addendum with an offer, and let's refresh our memories there too. When you prepare what you would call, or what we might call, a contract, and it's signed by, say, just the buyers, that's just an offer. So you're preparing an offer. It's not till the sellers sign and everything back and forth is agreed, signed, and initialed that you have a contract. Let's keep that in mind. So just again, as an example, you send over an offer for $200,000. The buyers send it back and say, well, we want $205,000. Well, now that's a counter offer. Your buyers come back and say, how about $2,003? That's a counter offer. You still don't have anything yet. The sellers come back and say, okay, we'll agree to $2,003, but we're not going to fix the roof, and we're putting that in writing. So somewhere in writing will be sellers not to repair the roof, and that should be initialed. So do you have a contract yet? No, not until the buyers and the sellers initial wherever that sentence was put. The sellers will not fix the roof, using that example. So the addendum will modify any of the conditions in an agreement of sale. Now let's keep in mind too, this is very important because I do see this a lot. It says here buyer, seller. So just that means both parties need to sign. And if there's two buyers on the contract and two sellers, then you need 4 signatures. It's good, in the olden days, let's call it the old days, you used to have to sign it to witness them signing it, so that we knew there's their signatures. An electronic signature, it's using .loop or DocuSign. It's a lot more it's verified that it's them, so you don't need to witness it. But it's not a bad idea to put your name there. It's not going to break an addendum or make it any more solid, but it's not a bad idea just for form to put your signature there too, that you acknowledge this addendum, especially if you're the one receiving it. So if you are the listing agent and a buyer's agent prepares an addendum and sends it over for your sellers to sign, it might not be a bad idea for you to sign it as well electronically. So what type of things can be modified? Well, anything in the contract. So to the letter of the law, any changes in the contract should be done with an addendum. It's not uncommon in some transactions to have 6 addendums. So starting off as a side tip, you're going to pull this form out from either .loop, the templates, or our Dropbox, where we have blank forms and it's a fillable form. And then don't just save it as an addendum, find a good way to save it. And I would, even though you think this may be the only addendum, I would number it as number 1. So for me to find it, I keep all my files, my PDF files like this, in a folder online so I could access it anywhere. Dropbox, Google Drive, wherever. But I would label this Addendum 01. I put a 01 in there just in case there's 10 or 11. Addendum 01. And then I might put the street name, Apple Blossom, Apple Blossom. And then I might put my client's name, Smith. And then I might put the date. It's good to have these things organized. 010101. Just the year, month, date, year. That way it's easier to find. So the other tip I would give you about, and make sure you have that saved to a folder for your transaction. Now, what are some of the things that can be changed? Well, like I said, to the letter of law, anything that changes is in there. So I don't see if the price changes, that should be put into an addendum. If there's what we commonly see it for is home inspection repairs. This is where you would put your home inspection repairs. The sellers will agree to repair and or remediate the following items. And I would number them. 1, loose handrail to the second floor. 2, broken window in the back sliding door. Try to be specific as you can in that type of thing. So let's look into filling it out. It's pretty simple. The date. This, of course, is the date that you are preparing this addendum. The property. This is the property, the subject property. So if your buyers are buying 123 Apple Blossom Lane, that's the address you put in. Of course, you put in the city, the town, the city, the state, and the zip as well over here. Who the sellers are, that's the one party. This is your identifying the parties, okay, because they're going to sign down here. So if you have 2 buyers, 2 sellers, then the sellers are, and I would put their full names, John Smith and Mary Smith, and I put it the same as they have it on the contract. That's just good legal form. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith, if the contract says, John R. Smith Jr. and Mary J. Smith, that's what I put here. I wouldn't put Mr. and Mrs. Smith or the Smiths. That's too vague. And you do that so the more precise you can be when you're preparing a legal document. And let's keep in mind, we're preparing a legal document here. We're not attorneys. We can't pretend to be attorneys. We can't interpret law. We could fill in blanks, but you want to help out the attorneys if this thing ever has to go to a court of law. And of course, God forbid, we never want it to, but you always have to be prepared for that. So you want this, instead of saying the Smiths, some attorney could argue, well, it could be any of the Smiths. How do you know it's our Smiths? Well, if you put John R. Smith and Mary J. Smith, as it says in the contract, then they can't make that argument. All right, so use the same names up here and here that's on the contract. What's the date of the agreement? Well, this is the date that's on the ratification date of the contract. So the ratification date would be really the last initial or the last signature on the contract. So that's the date that you would put there. And what's the date of settlement? This is the proposed date of settlement. Now, sometimes this addendum will be something like the settlement date will be revised from, let's pick a date, August 15th to August 30th, and you would also put in the year 2000 X, whatever it is. In here, you would put the original settlement date. Date of settlement, August 15th. And then put down here what it's going to be. Now let's talk a little bit about what to write in there. Again, you want to keep it as specific as possible whenever you're writing something that really involves law. You want to put in all the details. So who is doing what, for whom, for how much, and by when, and why, if you have all those things. So if you have something, sellers providing $5,000, that's way too vague. All right, and that, just in case that, let's just say it came out to be sellers. My problem is I look at the screen while I'm doing this, and I don't want to usually. Seller providing $5,000. Okay, I will see this sometimes in other agents doing it. Don't be that agent. You want to be as specific as possible. So I would write the sellers are to provide, let's try to do, to provide to who? To the buyers $5,000. Why? To be applied towards the buyers, and I see it, settlement costs. There we go. Costs at the when time of settlement. So you could see here, this is pretty weak. Seller providing $5,000. Here, the seller's to provide to the buyers $5,000. Who, to who, how much, what they're going to do, why, towards the settlement costs, when, at the time of settlement. That's a good addendum clause because it's much more specific. Much more specific. The other things can be changed now to the letter of the law. Anything in the contract that is altered should be changed. So I have seen addendums, and sometimes we could get too involved in paperwork, and I get that. Here I want to keep you compliant. I want to make sure you're doing your paperwork correctly. But you know, we have to think about listing and selling real estate too. That's what we do. We're there to help our clients the best way we can. We don't want to be full-time pencil pushers and form fillers. But I have seen where in financing contingency, the type of mortgage changed. So let's say it was a conventional mortgage that was in the original contract, and now it's going to be a VA, government-backed VA loan. Well, you should probably write an addendum on that. One reason is a conventional loan, they do an inspection and this and that. With a VA loan, the appraiser will do an inspection and they'll look for safety issues because it's a government-backed loan. They do the same thing for an FHA, which is a government-backed loan. So whereas in a conventional loan, let's just use what we talked about before, a loose handrail. Sometimes going up to the second story, the handrail's a little loose, and you know those screws need to be tightened into the wall. Not a big deal. But in a conventional loan, the home inspector may say, I'm going to put this in the report, but it's not a major item. But these screws should be tightened or reset and just, you know, sturdy up this handrail a little bit. Okay, thanks. Or maybe you don't even want to mention it and you can do it yourself. It's not a big deal. Okay, thanks. Not so with a VA or an FHA loan because it's government backed. Now the home inspector is going to say, and the appraiser is going to say, that is now a major item because it's a safety issue. So those, I know, I know, they're going to say, you need to, that has to be done. That it's now mandatory to be done. Same thing, the infamous crack in the concrete driveway. Whereas a crack before was, and I'm not complaining, I get it. A crack in a driveway was, hey, you might want to get some sealer and seal up that crack. With the FHA or a VA, that's a trip hazard and needs to be repaired. So you would write those things in there. If you were writing in something for a home inspection and you're requesting repairs, this is the form you would use. And I would number them. I would put things in there, but I would also number them just for reference, because sometimes these things get negotiated out as well. Now, on a side tip, I usually try to add a few more things in there, some smaller things. So let's say my buyers really want, I represent my buyers, they really want these 6 things done, and they're willing to do 5 of them themselves. I may put in and suggest, I do it with permission, because you don't work on your own. You do it with the permission of your buyers. I may say, well, do you mind if I ask for this one and this one as well, so we have 8 items? Oh, it's okay. I mean, they're not a big deal for me. I know, but if they do it, great. But at least now you have something to negotiate with. You've added some chips to the table. So let's say the sellers come back and say, we're not doing these 8 things. And now you have something to say, well, how about if we remove number 7 and number 8 and number 6, and you just take care of these 5. All right, we could do that. So you have some chips to negotiate with. What are some other things that can be modified? Well, certainly a settlement date. A lot of times that just gets changed and no one does an addendum on it. You should have an addendum on it. It's not crucial. I can't say it's crucial, but you know, if we're following the letter of the law, you should have it. You're changing an important fact in the agreement. Now, think about doing an addendum always for changing of a settlement date. Now, let's just say that this, you know, transaction is a little contentious, and you and the other agent are kind of at odds with each other, and the buyers and sellers are a little bit odds at each other. Let's say your settlement date is on the 20th of the month. That's what the agreement of sale says. It says the 20th. But it's a little bit of a contentious transaction. They not all are. They don't always are. But let's just say this one is. And the settlement date gets changed from the 20th, 1 week it gets pushed to the 27th. The sellers can claim, if there's no addendum, the sellers can claim, well, forget it, we're out of contract. Now, why are they out of contract? Because time is of the essence and the settlement was supposed to be on the 20th. As soon as the 21st gets there, you're out of contract. And yeah, you are. They could take that to a court of law and win that because there wasn't any addendum to alter a material fact of the agreement of sale. In this case, we're going to have the settlement date from the 20th pushed to the 27th. And once again, just keep in mind down here, where are we? There we go. Everybody needs to sign it. Everybody needs to sign it. Let's see. What are some other things? Well, if something gets added, I wouldn't do this for a personal sale. So sometimes I see a buyer wants a John Deere tractor, and they're going to ask for it, a riding mower. And the sellers, maybe they're retired, they're downsizing, they're moving to a 55-plus community, they don't want the tractor. If it's going to be added at no cost into the sale, then it should be done in an addendum. If it wasn't mentioned, if this came up later down the road, you know, you have a contract, it's signed, it's all in place, and 3 weeks later, we're doing an inspection, we're looking over there, the sellers are there, and the buyer very innocently asks, what are you going to do with that John Deere? And the seller says, well, I'll tell you what, I have no use for it. Do you guys want it? I'll just give it to you. I would put that in there. If it's personal property and they're gonna buy it, I don't think that should be part of a real estate transaction, because that's like if I was selling a lawnmower to you. It has no bearing on a real estate contract. So that's something that what you would advise is that just say, hey, listen, this is between you and the seller. You'll give him a check for $500 or whatever he's asking for it. At the time of settlement or after settlement, something like that. But that's just between you and me. That's really not part of the contract. But sometimes I see things like washer and dryer, same scenario. They weren't included, and the seller comes back and says, my wife and I were talking, where we're moving, we have no use for this washer and dryer. She wants a new one. Do you want to keep these? I would include that. It's because they're saying it's coming for free as part of the real estate transaction. So I would include that in there. So what else can you use an addendum for? I've seen it used to correct somebody's name. Maybe you pull on a tax records Mary R. Smith, but that's not the legal name that she goes by. She goes by Mary R. Jones. For whatever reason, maybe it's professional. You might want to change the name. You can use an addendum to change the name. They're going to put more money down. You could use an addendum to change that. So you use an addendum after the fact, after everything is signed and initialed. While you're still negotiating and going back and forth, you can make changes and have things initialed. But once you've done all that, and you've got a set contract, anytime you need to change or alter the conditions of that contract, that's what you're going to use an addendum for. And this, again, for the agreement of sale. This is not for listing agreements. That's a different piece of paper. This is just a contract, an agreement of sale, or an S. So very simple form to fill out. I realize I probably spent about 20 minutes here. Yep, 20 minutes. Just wanted to give you some ifs and whys and hows. So let's just review. Date. What's being sold? The seller's name, legal name, the buyer's legal name. When was this contract originally signed? When is our original settlement date? And what's going to be changed? And you want to be specific. Who, what, when, where, why, and how in there. And then you want everybody to sign it. Now sometimes I will see, I'm going to give you another bit of advice here. Sometimes I see being uploaded to our office files an addendum, and it's only signed by the buyers. If you think you have an addendum, you don't. you just have a piece of paper that's signed by the buyers. It's not an addendum till everybody signs. So even if you have an addendum that is signed by the buyers and you call the other agent, let's say you represent the buyers, and you call the listing agent and he says, well, let me talk to my sellers, and he comes back and says, yeah, they're fine with that. We're all good. Oh, great. You don't have an addendum. So sometimes I'll hear, well, they agreed to it. Agreeing to it means signing it. Okay, agreeing to it on the phone means nothing. All right, even though they're legit and it's, you know, truly an agreement, they need to sign it for you to have a legal addendum. Now, here's my other thought here too, that what I do, and this is just from experience. You could create your own system, but I have a file saving system. What I do is when I prepare this document, right now it's called Addendum to Agreement of Sale, and I'm going to save as, and I told you we're going to put in, you know, Addendum 01, and because this means, and that's the topic, you know, the Addendum 01. You could put in the topic if you want, home inspection, and then put in the street name, Apple Blossom. If you think you want to put in the address, you know, 123 Apple Blossom, that's fine. But when I write this out, and I have no signatures on it, and I'm about to save it, I'm about to send it to my buyers, if that's who I represent, to sign it first, I'm going to put a -A at the end of that file name, and I'll just type it right in here just to show you. This is not part of an addendum, but I'm just using this as a whiteboard space. This is how I would save it. Addendum, whoops, 01, because there may be 5 or 6 more. Apple Blossom, Smith, 01, 01, 1, whatever year it is. And then here's where I do it. I put in an A. Now, why do I do that? This is the first version, and I save that to my Dropbox or my Google Drive, wherever my folder is, and have a folder. But that means that I have a prepared document. Now, let's say the buyers come back to me, they call and say, hey, I got your addendum, but you put the 8 items for a home repair. You forgot the 9th one. That was a big one for us. Oh, I thought you said you were going to take care of it. No, we want the sellers to take care of it. That's the leaky faucet in the 2nd bedroom, bathroom. Okay, no problem. So now you write it again. So you add to it. And guess what I'm going to call this one? B. That's my next revision. Now, the sellers sign it. Oops. Okay, this is how it would look in my files. The sellers, the buyers sign it. I go into my file to save this new version as, what am I going to save it as? Same thing, C. So now I know, so there's no confusion. Now I'm going to have to email this or get this over to the other parties. I know I'm going to be able to grab the right one because it's always going to be the latest letter, whatever it is, C. So now they come back and say, we revised it. We're not going to do 4 and we're not going to do 3. There's a cross out. We signed it, but your buyers need to initial the changes. Okay. D. Your buyers initial it. So now what do you have? You have all the changes made, you have all the signatures and all the initials. So now I'm going to change this one to E. Now it could be F, G, it could keep going. It could just be A, B, and C when it's nice and clean and cut. But this saves you a lot of trouble. Now every time I look in there, I don't have to open up in my file folders 5, 6 addendums or more looking for the right one to upload or send to someone else. Let's say the attorney calls and says, hey, could you send that addendum over that you just got signed? Sure. And you're double clicking. Nope, that's the one that's just signed one way. And then you double click. Oh, that's the wrong addendum. That's for the other thing. That's, here you're going to know first off that it's an addendum as opposed to any other files in this file. This is, think of this right here, okay, as what you'd look for in your File Explorer when you're looking through a folder, okay. And again, I just wrote it here to use this as a whiteboard. All right. First off, the attorney says, can you send over an addendum? So you have an agreement of sale that should be labeled just like this, similar to this. You have, a CIS, you have this, you have that. Label them all as to what they are. But now at least here, let's say there's 6 addendums, okay? And I don't mean 6 versions. This here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versions, progressions of addendum number 1. So let's say there's an addendum number 2, and it doesn't have to do with home inspection. It has to do with something else. The septic system is going to be pumped, or the mortgage is going to be changed from a VA to a conventional. That's going to be addendum number 2, and you go through the same progression with A, B, C, D. So now the attorney calls, says, hey, can you send over that addendum you just got signed? Sure. I know that I could grab and attach this one right here and not have to worry about it. I can't tell you how much time this saves of double clicking and opening up file after file after file trying to find the correct one. So now let's say there's, you did a second addendum for something else. They're going to be addendum number 2. The attorney calls, says, hey, can you send over that new addendum? Sure. You know it's going to be addendum number 2. Look how easy it's going to be. And whatever the most bottom letter is, that should be the one that you're going to grab and send over. All right? So that's just a helpful tip. It sounds like a little thing. In real estate, see, things are pretty easy when you've got your very first transaction or one transaction. It's pretty easy to remember a lot of stuff. This stuff that I just had up there now becomes much more valuable after you've done 20 of them and they start to run together, or you have 4 going at the same time or 3 going at the same time. It becomes much more valuable. And if you spend 6 minutes looking for the file as opposed to 30 seconds and go, that saves you 5.5 minutes. And if you don't think that's a lot, organize your life in some other ways, and you're going to find that you're going to pick up an hour, 2 hours a day. And that 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day, whatever it is, can be spent doing extra work if you want, having a longer break, going into the pool in the summertime, taking off early and participating in a hobby. So if you could get all your work done for the day by 3 o'clock and be done, rather than by 4:30 and be done, you've gained an hour and a half in your day. And this is one small step towards it. It also keeps you less aggravated too, because looking through all those files, I guarantee you'll be aggravated. So that's it for this time. And until next time, I'll talk to you again. Your homework, find where this is in the Dropbox, pull it out. Most of the time I say take a look at it, read it, but you can see here there's not much to read. Thanks a lot.